Hey, it's Armin with Attract. At Attract Advisors, we offer accounting advisory, tax advisory, as well as financial management services. We're lucky enough to work with very many hardworking, talented entrepreneurs across many different industries. Many of these individuals are world-class in their sphere and have great stories to tell. This is our way of highlighting their accomplishments and their insights, and we hope you enjoy these conversations.
Welcome back, everybody, to Kickin Assets. We're super excited for our next guest here. I'm gonna allow her to introduce herself and give us a little bit of background about her. I think we're gonna dive into some awesome things, all sales, all business related. Personal development is also really important to our guest, I believe. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you guys. And so without further ado, I'll introduce Miss Christy Baker.
Thank you so much, Sean. I'm so excited to be here. This is one of my favorite podcasts. I love watching it, so it's an honor just to be part of it. So thank you so much. But as he said, my name is Christy Baker. I'm actually an employee benefits advisor with NFP. I help local organizations with their benefit programs. But first and foremost, I'm also a mom and a wife. I have 2 little boys, so I'm a boy mom. We do all the baseball, all the things the boys love to do. That's what we're constantly doing. And then my husband, he's also a Baton Rouge firefighter. He's been there for about 20 years. But as far as my family goes, we live out in Central. We grew up out there. I went away for college. I went to a little school, Northwestern in Natchitoches. I absolutely loved it. Good college town. Then moved back to Baton Rouge, and I've been back ever since. So
That's so great. So I always like, talking to folks who are, movers and shakers in business. I mean, with social media, and I think you guys do an amazing job of getting the brand out there. And I mean, I knew about the brand even before I met you, which is really awesome. But business is just a collection of people, right? And people themselves are a collection of experiences and lessons. And so, I'm interested to learn a bit more about, your upbringing, and you strike me as someone who's very outgoing and very confident, and I think you're excellent at what you do. But there were things along the way of coming up that you learned from, or you fine-tuned. And so take me back to like the high school, Christy. So you went to Central High as well?
I went to Central Private, actually.
Central Private, okay.
Yeah, so graduated with a whole 40 people. But yeah, so I was real involved in school. I always have been in activities. I was a cheerleader. I really just took really good pride in my academics. And then that led me to Northwestern, where I actually cheered in college there. I was in a sorority. I did every activity or any kind of organization I could be a part of. It's always just been something that's really dear to me. And as far as after that, I knew for sure I wanted to get into something with business development, with sales, just because I love being around people, helping people, solving problems. I just love a good challenge. And everybody you come across is unique and different. And so every day looks a little bit different.
And so did you jump right into business development out of college? And what did that first job for you look like?
My first job, I actually went to school. I graduated with a degree in nutrition. So I helped start up and run weight loss programs throughout Baton Rouge. I helped them get going in about 5 locations, but I helped a large clientele. I think it was over 300 people that I've actually helped in my career with their weight loss journey or their nutrition plans and things like that. But I had to get involved in the community, and I really just love that. How you best market yourself is by referrals or other people, mentioning your name. And so that was my first real type put yourself out there type job, which I really enjoyed. But then I wanted to go into more of corporate America, and that's where I got into national sales, which I really enjoyed and did it for a long time, and really just different unique challenges within that. But then I really came across Chris, who is the firm owner of NFP, and I really just liked what they were doing over there. I wanted to be more involved here. I wanted to be involved locally, not just on that national level. I wanted to be out and about with the people, moving and shaking, as you said. That's really where I got involved and was like, this is what I want to do.
And so, your nutrition gig, I've been a member of every gym in Baton Rouge. My wife and I have lived here pretty much my entire life, and then my wife's entire adult life. And so we've been to the Spectrums and the Gold's Gyms and Foxy's and Callaway's and eSporta. Before that was LA Fitness, and then before then it was Bally's. We've been to all of these gyms, and what I found is like the gym scene in Baton Rouge is, number one, very close knit, and I always tell like our younger employees, whether if they're single, I'm like, you don't need to be in the bars, like you need to be at the gym and a bookstore.
There you
right?
go.
And I'm just curious about like coming up, your first gig was, in the gym / nutrition scene. You were selling something that was obviously very important to people, but you still had to make the ask, right? Because maybe there's a sentiment on their end that they're maybe embarrassed to ask.
Absolutely.
And so how did you overcome that?
That's a great question. And that is probably one of the biggest challenges, but also one of the most rewarding. It's building that trust, really diving in each week whenever you see them, just building, communicating, just making people feel a sense at home, sense of peace, That way you build that trust and that rapport that gradually, kind of opens people up. But as you say, you can't go out and just market to people. So
right,
how do you
do that? You look like you need to get on a diet.
Right.
Like,
so how do you exactly? So it is very challenging when it comes to that, and that's where those referrals come in. So you're a walking billboard basically. So if you have success, so having successful clients means gaining other clients just from talking to others basically. And marketing, everything, comes back to marketing. That's so huge, just getting yourself out there, letting people know who you are, just seeing you around, making sure that you're going to stick, So
from like a formal sales training perspective, did you learn kind of the ropes as you went with the nutrition gig, or were there some resources that you really dove into? And, for our listeners, this is something that's near and dear to my heart here at Attract, because we just hired a sales representative, which you helped us.
Yay, I'm excited about that.
And she started Monday, and we have our first client call today.
Yay.
And so, or prospect call today. So I'm really pleased about that. But, sales is a business in itself. And I feel like a lot of times even our clients treat it as just another department, whereas it's the department. And having someone who is very intentional and driven and outgoing and all the things that, we've talked about so far in sales, that's one thing. But then there's a skill set too that you develop, whether it's cadence of follow-ups or your cold call script or, handling objections. So I'm curious, did you ever do any formal sales training, or did you just learn as you went?
What I really feel like that has helped me along the way is just having strong mentors and leaders. They're really resilient. It teaches you emotional, intelligence, everything like that. You really want to learn how to be strategic. So having those mentors, but also just learning from doing. And plus, it's a learned skill set, but it's also one that's kind of just given. Some people just have a natural knack for it, and I feel like I do. I really can connect well with others, and just having other people along the way just guide me and show me the ropes, and it's all about learning. I'm constantly learning. I want to stay ahead of the curve. I don't want to just stick, with the curve. I want to be ahead of it. I want to be constantly learning. So this is where mentors come in. This is where podcasts come in. This is where all types of learning. I'm just trying to constantly pick people's brain in order to be better.
And that's a awesome segue into my next question, because when we're talking about mentors, we're talking about someone being ready to be mentored and a mindset of humility and of open-mindedness and of growth-mindedness. And those are literally in our marketing plan for our ideal client psychographic. Like that is what we want in our clients and our employees and our vendors. And, I'm curious, it sounds like that's always been a thing for you, being open-minded. Also at Attract, we say humbly confident.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just a big sales trait as well. But for your mentors, did they just reach out to you, or did you reach out to them? Because same way with the nutrition side, it's like, hey, I think you really need to be mentored. Well, a lot of people would get taken aback by that. So how do you develop, like, how do you become a good mentee?
A good mentee, you have to be open. You definitely, I go and search, and I find those people. I'm like, I want to be like them. I want to learn from them. So how can I be more like them? So yeah, you have to be able to go out and put yourself out there and approach those people, you know, the ones that you really look up to. I have a strong female right now that is helping mentor me just within leadership roles, you know, sitting in business boardrooms full of men and you being the only female. So I think it's super important to find your own people too, you know, so you find your own unique style, you could say.
Yeah. So these questions just keep building because you know, the next piece is, you know, the humble confidence that we talked about. You know, I kind of felt that from you even before I met you. But I know myself, even I struggle with imposter syndrome, or like before picking up a cold call, you know, like, you know, psyching myself out going in. And so for you, is that something that you just kind of worked your way out of, or do you still feel that?
Oh, for sure. I think everybody gets a little bit nervous or anxious just coming on this podcast. I feel extremely confident having conversations about sales. I could talk about it all day long. You know, it's just but putting yourself out there, you know, being a little bit uncomfortable, which is okay, because that's where all the growth is going to come in. So I know once I walk through that door, I'm going to learn something new, or I'm going to make a new friend.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like, you know, it's a lot like working out or eating right.
Yeah.
You know, it sucks in the moment,
right,
but you're going to grow from it.
You are.
And I think back, you know, from nutrition and sports. It sounds like you learned a lot of those lessons in sports about kind of like embracing the suck and then, you know, seeing the results. And, and then you had proof of concept, right?
Right.
And, you know, we say, I tell my daughters all the time, you know, we'll keep a promise to ourselves, and then we'll fulfill that promise. And then we make another promise, and then we fulfill that promise. And that's how you build confidence, knowing that when you put your mind to something, like, you're going to accomplish it. And it sounds like being a, you know, Division I cheerleader, or, you know, in all of the things that you set your mind to, you prove to yourself that setting a goal and attaining it was possible.
Right.
And I feel that, at least with my peers, I look around and there were people who had good goals early on, but they weren't able to sustain it through being an adult, through getting married, through having children. So what has that progression looked like for you as your priorities become second to your family's, but yet you're still able to accomplish those? Like, as a working mom, like, what is that like for you?
As a working mom, I find it one of the biggest compliments, actually, because I can wake up every day, I go to work, I try to do the best that I can, treat others the way I want to be treated, and I want to leave that as a legacy for my children to see, you know. And plus, you know, I have 2 sons. They might want to follow my footsteps one day, you know. I would love to have something to be able to hand down to them. That would be really cool.
Yeah, and you're leading by example.
Right.
You know, my mom, I give her a hard time, but she worked her butt off, and my dad too, obviously. But, you know, I always used to give my mom a hard time because I was the last kid picked up from extended care every day.
Right.
And you know, I'd be like, "What's for dinner?" And she's like, "I haven't even thought about it yet."
Yeah.
But what that showed me was the work ethic that it took to just be successful.
Right.
And hardworking people surround themselves with other hardworking people, and high achievers don't mix with mediocre people. And you strike me as a high achiever, and so, you know, in what I know about NFP, you know, there are many more high achievers there.
Right.
And you know, I sit on the board with Mr. Frank.
He's
and
wonderful.
I think, you know, he's just commands the room. He's a chair of the Alzheimer's Services Board of the Capital Area, which is one of the best nonprofits in town, if not the best. I'm a little partial because I'm on the board, but he is just such an amazing leader. So could you talk a little bit about NFP and, really your experience with it, but maybe a brief history on it too, because I think more of Baton Rouge needs to know about what it is that you guys do.
So at NFP, we specialize in employee benefits. We help local organizations with their benefit packages. We help implement them, design them, manage them, run all their programs for them. But not just that. We're not just providing spreadsheets and coming in once a year. We really try to act as your strategic partner. That's where I think kind of sets us a little bit apart. We don't want to come in just once a year to open enrollment. We want to come and provide solutions throughout the year, provide education, really build on those relationships, ensure compliance. But what is also makes NFP a little bit more unique is we are very strong in our local relationships, but we're also a global firm. So we're able to provide these innovative solutions, but still provide that boutique service that people really want.
That's amazing. So talk to me about the culture of NFP, because obviously the brand is amazing. I'm a branding guy, even though I'm an accountant. And accountants'
we
brands,
are a little bit different accountants.
Well, we have low standard of brand awareness because no firms are really doing much of it. At least I hope I'm not being ignorant there. But I love you guys' brand. But the brand is a reflection of the culture, and I want to know. I'm interested to learn more about the culture of NFP, and how is it that high achievers are attracted and rewarded, and just building each other up?
Our culture is really based off integrity and putting people first. We really have a winning culture over there, whether that's being close with our vendor partners or our colleagues or whoever's out in the market that we can work with. We're very selective with our partners as well. We know there's not a one size fits all, so we want to make sure our partners align with that. That way we're able to provide those best solutions for our clients.
So here's a tough question, and it's one that I get asked a lot, as an accounting firm. I get asked so much that I've thought about putting together a marketing campaign as the anti-CPA firm.
Right.
When I think about benefits consultants, through the years, I'll have somebody who brings in literally a stack of paper, 14, 16 inches high. And, it's very, it's boring. I mean, I'll be honest, it's boring.
Absolutely.
We're digging into things that we don't need to dig into. But what really sets NFP apart from the other solutions that are out there?
What sets us apart is our people. I really just believe that. Our people are really what makes the difference. We have a winning culture over there. Everybody comes in. They genuinely want to help others. They want to focus on the solutions to those problems, not just showing up with the stack and trying to nitpick it apart to try to find that solution in the last minute. We want to build those relationships. We network with our partners, with our clients, like you guys. We text each other, we have lunch. We do so much more on just building that relationship. But what really just sets us apart, I just think, is our people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's the same for Attract, right? Because we get sent an email and, there are ways to do the bare minimum. There are ways to, meet expectations, and then there are ways to over deliver. And NFP strikes me as a culture that over delivers. And as you mentioned earlier, we're amazing referral partners for one another.
Right.
There are so many HR things that come up that, we're sitting in our team meeting and we're like, who can help us? And it's like, oh, Christy. If she can't help us, she knows someone who can.
Somebody who can. That's
And, just you guys' responsiveness it's tough to say because everybody says they're responsive.
Right.
Until 2 weeks ago when I called you and you were at your son's World Series game and you answered my question. And I didn't know, of course, I wouldn't have bothered you. But I think there is a lot of room for companies to improve on their team members' willingness to go the extra mile. Now, I'm not saying to turn their team into workaholics, but to do your very best, because the culture, it sets the culture, and it makes you feel good when you show up to somewhere and everybody's bought in and rowing in the same direction.
Yes.
And so I take it that's kind of been your experience with NFP?
Yeah, so I was actually having lunch with our director of client services yesterday, and this is exactly what we were talking about. I was like, never have I ever seen a team that just wants to be there, who wants to do well, who takes so much pride, who goes that extra step of answering the call whenever the call is, needed. You never know what that client might need. It's just going that extra mile. But the way that I think that people are bought in is by our great leadership. We have really good leadership who really encourages us just to be who we are. His advice before I came on the podcast, just be who you are. I promise you that's plenty enough.
Yes.
So it's just uplifting each other. And plus just giving the sense of freedom, like let people do their jobs, just giving them a sense of accomplishment on their own, let them be,
So when I think about you, I think about just a extreme networker. And I don't know if there's many events that happen in Baton Rouge that you're not attending. And I'm curious if that's something that you've always been intentional about. And then I guess the second part of that question is, what's it done for your business?
Oh my gosh, this is a great question. I could talk about networking because it's my favorite part of my business. As you can see, I'm always there. If I get the invite, I will be there. I enjoy it. It's how I've built my business. Is really been so successful just because of the networking. People you get to really know people, and that's where you start building that trust before you just go in and try to pitch somebody. Nobody wants to be pitched. No one. No matter what you're selling, that's just not what they want. So networking has really, really just put me out there, being in the community, being involved, just showing up. That goes a long way with people.
Yeah. And I used to host a real estate investor meetup, which is actually how I met Jared Miguez, which is how I met Jonah. And, it was an opportunity for me to be a connector. But it was also, I tell the group, if you're new to the group, everybody who's sitting in this seat wants to talk to somebody new. They wouldn't come to the networking event if they didn't want to network.
Right.
And so don't wait on an invitation to go speak to somebody. The invitation is, they give you the invitation when they walk in the door. And I love that about you, is that, you're really not worried to walk up to a crowd and really just kind of find your way in. But do you have any any tips for how do you navigate that? Because I've been in groups and, look, you form a triangle with, talking to a man, a woman, whatever. And it's a little closed off, but you want to at least introduce yourself to somebody or maybe everybody in that group. So what's your tips for breaking into that and, at least introducing yourself?
That is a really good question. And that's actually, I'm a weirdo when it comes to this, because those are one of my favorite things to do, is just go up, introduce myself. But like you said, I just try to put myself in their shoes. I try to talk about, be thoughtful on what I say. I'm not just going up to pitch. I just want to meet people simply. And they're there too to meet you.
Right.
Like you said, if you just get into that mindset of they're there to network, they're there for the same reasons. People are all feeling the same way. It's just, and once you start introducing yourself, that's where all the magic happens.
Yeah. I wish that there was a camera on people when they walk into a networking event, because I like to watch. Because look, it's awkward for me too, but I can at least have a sense of humor that's kind of self-deprecating sometimes, and make fun of myself a bit. But it's just so crazy when you go into a networking event and there's nobody there to receive you, and you just kind of walk in and you literally put your head on a swivel, and then you're like, dang, what's next? You're just going to sit there awkwardly.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of learned that whenever I was hosting, when I host networking events, I can't talk to somebody very long if I'm the host, because I need to be connecting people, right?
Yes.
And so, but you guys have had, your own networking events that you host, and I'm curious as to, what do you think gets people in the room on the networking events that you host? And how is it that you basically convince them to be there?
Yeah, that is also a really good question, because that could be the biggest challenge, is how do we get people there? Simply, the best way is to host where people want to go, hold it at a venue that people actually can frequent, that's at a good location, at a good time. Maybe it's right after work. Don't let people go home, because once they go home, they're not coming back.
Right.
So it's timing. A lot of it, is just having the right timing, having the right marketing, making sure that you have all your invites going out to the right people. And then also, I think it's always good to have a committee. Like you said, make sure that you have a committee. That way, when people do arrive, that people know to go and network, introduce themselves, kind of let them set the stage on what to expect for the rest of the day. Right.
And this is something we've talked about internally. Like you mentioned, timing. We've had some success with some client appreciation lunches. We've talked about doing some things after work. We've talked about doing like a tailgate at an LSU game or something like that. But what has kind of been the winning formula for you guys when it comes to hosting networking events?
Also, I wanted to add too is a good speaker. If you're going to have a good topic, that's usually key too. So we, of course, in our line of business, it's usually going to be related around HR or something around benefits, of course, but really try to get people in the room. Even if you can get someone who's even certified, for us, they need certification credit. So that always can help get people into a room too. But as far as getting them in the room and keeping them in the room and keeping them, going, it's mainly providing the right food. Yeah. Drinks are always nice too. People like drinks. But for us, it's mainly been the lunches, or the after hours, the happy hours. The happy hours seem to do really well too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
An early happy hour is usually good.
And somebody brought up in our team meeting the other day, like a Friday lunch and leave. And I'm like, what is that? She's like, it's when you go to lunch and then nobody goes back to work after that. But that's the networking event, is the lunch and leave. And we've been in grind mode for almost 4 years now. Right. And I haven't, I've worked every Friday afternoon for, 4 years. So it's foreign to me. Yeah. But it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
We were thinking about that too, is like, when it comes to drinking and stuff, obviously it loosens people up. So it's probably better to do that after hours. And then the objections are, well, people have kids and yada, yada. But you're always going to have objections. Yep. Right? And that's really a nice segue into our next piece of dealing with objections. Okay. You have to have thick skin as a salesperson. You probably heard every objection in the book. Oh, yeah. But in general, how do you deal with objections? Because I've been not trained, but I've read and podcasts and all that, you almost just have to not ignore it, you address it, but then you just keep selling. Yeah. And until they get tired and they say, okay. Right. So how do you deal with objections?
Well, that's the key too, is you just want to keep going until you get the no, essentially, because an objection is not a no. And I think that's the biggest lesson right there. You can't just take that first. Everyone is going to give you an objection, even the people that are buying, they're going to give you an objection. So just being prepared. But like you say, you need to really address what that is and provide a solution, not just listen to their problem, but you have to have some sort of solution or type to overcome that objective.
It's such a chess game, isn't it? It is. Because if they move this piece, you've got 2 or 3 moves planned, and that comes, with experience. Yes. So, you've offered to us, kind of helping with the sales rep and stuff like that. But I'm curious as to when new salespeople come through, what are some of the areas of improvement that they need most? And is it something that could be potentially generational of their weaknesses? I think about certain employees that I have, they were in high school when COVID hit. And there were just skills that they didn't have the opportunity to develop because it was an antisocial world for a couple of years. So what do you see in young salespeople these days?
I think you're spot on, because it's the ability to talk to other people and not just behind a computer or texting. people, especially in Baton Rouge, they really are old school. They like to shake your hand. They like to sit down. They like to meet with you. For the most part, those are your business owners are mainly looking for those relationships. And that's what the salespeople are trying to get to. But I definitely think it's a generational thing. So we could definitely see that shift in business decision owners, here shortly, in the near future. But for now, I feel like that is the biggest thing is they just learning those social skills again, because you haven't always had to have them like we always had to.
Right. And I mean, you think about I think the iPhone came out in 2007. I was in high school, and just how different the world has been since the iPhone, right?
It's great, but
it's a great tool.
Great tool.
But it's still a phone at that, and you're supposed to talk on the phone. And one thing that I've really poured a lot of, I guess, time and learning more about is cold calling. One of our clients is Matthew Laborde from Elephant, and he'll live and die by cold calling. And
that's actually how I got Elephant as a client, was a cold call. I walked into Elephant. I had to go in because I tried the email, that didn't work. I was like, let me find their love language. And that's what it was. I walked in, and sure enough, that's what they had a need, and we were able to fulfill it.
And isn't it so poetic how the cold call piece, first of all, it's as close as you can get to a face-to-face conversation, right? You have inflection, you have energy that can come through the phone with your voice and your tone. You're able to ask questions that sound like you really care, which good salespeople actually do really care.
Right, yeah.
And then it's also very efficient. How many times does somebody's tonality come across the wrong way in an email, and someone gets offended, and relationships will be ruined and all those types of things. And so it sounds like cold calling is important to you.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big part of my job, and it's actually part of the biggest challenge, of course, but it's the part I enjoy. It's because that there is going to be a win out there for you. So you just got to keep plugging, even on those nights where you're worried and you're stayed up late. Have I done everything I could do? Am I staying ahead of everything? But as long as you've stayed ahead, you've really worked hard, you'll be fine.
And do you have a goal of making a certain number of cold calls per week or month or something?
Sure. Yeah, I do. I have weekly goals. And those cold calls could be drops, dropping in, bringing a little goodie, trying to get a little bit of FaceTime. There's be your emails and your phone calls, of course, but also your networking events. I count that as a lot of cold calling too. So if I'm going up and doing the actual networking, you're making those connections. So I definitely have goals for the week of how many networking, and a lot of those networking too, I try to do some one-on-ones, within that. Try to meet somebody at that event I can have a coffee with, or grab lunch with. If not, I'm going to learn something from them,
Right. And if they don't need it, then they might know somebody who does.
That's exactly right.
And that's been kind of the mantra around here at Attract is, when we have somebody on the hook or somebody who doesn't really have a need for what it is that we do,
right,
it's still worth just making that connection, because you never know, and then staying top of mind.
Yeah. Right.
So talk to me about that for you, because you're always checking in with people. I don't think you take anything for granted. I don't think good salespeople do, because they know that there could be more of you out there trying to, win the work. So what are some of your methods for following up with clients or staying top of mind?
Yeah, that is exactly right. You have to stay ahead. You want to stay top of mind, because like you said, it's not always a yes right away. And especially in what I do now, it's a long sales cycle. It's a long time. You have to build trust. You have to build relationships, a relationship business. But staying top of mind, we have great marketing tools. We send out newsletters. So it's making sure that we have, all of our people in our system that we need to be put in. But also putting stuff out there on social media, staying top of mind, but also doing those drops, trying to grab those coffees, trying to grab those lunches, trying to build that relationship.
So I've read also in these sales books that sometimes you have to reach out to a person 7 times before you can get them to respond. And it doesn't have to be the craziest story for you, but I always like hearing sales wins that took a long time to come across, you know, whether it's years or hundreds of phone calls, or we had the deal sealed and we lost it, but then we got it back 3 years later. So do you have something that comes to mind that, you know?
Yeah, I actually have one I'm thinking of top of mind that's current. I have been working them since the day I started.
Which was when?
About 3 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been a long sales cycle. It was just getting in front of the right people. I was in front of the right people, but those people were wanting to essentially retire and get out the door. So they weren't ready. They weren't wanting to make any changes. You know, so it's just staying top of mind. I see them all the time. I try to still connect. And guess what? That person is now leaving. There's a new contact coming in. Their broker actually has left the company that they're with. So they now are in need. So it's just that great example of just staying top of mind, because now they're like, they've called us back,
Wow.
you know, and they're like, hey, now's the time. We need you guys. And, you know, it's a large case. So it's, you know, we're, you know, staying in touch with and keeping the follow up and just staying top of mind. And also I've already built that trust. So now the sales cycle can be a little quicker.
Yeah, you're just ready to close at this point. Like, tell me where to sign.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, a lot of people's egos or feelings get hurt when they keep getting strung along or they keep getting ghosted. Is that something that you've kind of like calloused yourself against over time? You know, you don't strike me as someone who's going to get upset if you get ghosted, right?
No, and I always just try to think of it as in that it's not me, you know, it's that person. It's just maybe it's that timing. Maybe they're just having a bad day. You know, if you have someone who's maybe not the nicest to you some days, I just try to remember, you know, people are people. I can't control other people, and I'm in the people business. So you have to really just learn to just let it go and just move on, because like I said, there's that next win out there somewhere.
No doubt. So, you know, kind of as we wrap up here, there were some things that you mentioned in the conversation about metrics and things that you track, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, here at the firm, that's really what we help our clients understand, whether we have, you know, dealing with financial data or non-financial data, which is, you know, metrics and customer acquisition cost and lifetime cost of a client and those types of things. And this isn't necessarily accounting based, but you guys strike me as someone who tracks those metrics and then acts on them. Is that something that you guys have done consistently? And if so, perhaps there was a time maybe in your previous career or previous stops in your career where that wasn't necessarily the case. Can you talk about how important numbers are to your day-to-day?
As far as metric goes, that's ever evolving for us. Past roles, current roles, but I think the key is having something that's attainable too, that is reachable. Stretch goals are great. It's always good to have those metrics as well, but there's always, you want to have something where people can actually reach and attain. So how are you going to get there? Through metrics.
And I think sales, from what I've learned, is just a game of massive action.
Yes.
You're making the calls, you're showing up to the events, you're tracking your progress as to how these meetings are going, and you just have to be relentless. And everybody thinks there's some silver bullet, you know, some sort of marketing tactic that's going to just have people banging down the door to come talk to you, right? And from your career of being successful now at 3 different stops, it sounds like massive action could be the number one thing when people ask what's it take to be successful in sales. I mean, would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny you said that, because the last client that I actually brought on, whenever we ran into them at eating lunch, they used the word relentless. They were like, Christy, she was relentless, you know. So finally we just told her yes. But they were laughing and smiling. It's just because I stayed top of mind. I continued to follow up. You know, I didn't take the no as a no. It was just a not right now, which it wasn't the right time right then, which always, it works itself out in the end too, which is the cool part about it too, is you always want things right now, but you know, sometimes right now isn't good for either one of you.
Right. That's so good. Well, as we wrap up here, I wanted to give you the opportunity to really plug yourself and the company, and, you know, how can people learn more about what it is that NFP does? I know you mentioned a podcast earlier, so kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to meet with people. Part of our process is just working a discovery. We would love to have a meeting with anybody who just wants to sit down and just take a review, just take a look over their benefits, just to see what they're currently doing. Like I said, we don't come in and pitch a product right away. We really want to sit down and learn more about the companies. So we would love to get in touch with anybody who would want to have us come in, have me sit down with them, just take a look at things. You can always reach me by my email, my phone. I'm happy to come by. We also have a podcast. It's called Wake Up with NFP. So there's always good marketing stuff out there on our socials.
That's great. And you're obviously very active on LinkedIn,
Yes.
Facebook, Instagram. Are y'all? And then are you all on TikTok?
Not yet.
We're not either. Well, I don't know. We're getting there.
We're getting there, yeah.
And so anyway, I think this has been really great for me. I hope the listeners get some value of sales here and a strong woman in business and someone who is very dear to the firm. And we're super happy you were here. I'm looking forward to following your success in the future.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.